The kitchen smelled of vanilla and butter as Margaret pressed the cookie cutter into the dough, creating perfect little stars. At 72, her hands still remembered the rhythm. Roll, press, lift. These were Lily's favorites. Her 6-year-old granddaughter would be up from her nap any minute, and Margaret wanted everything to be perfect for their Friday afternoon together. She hummed softly, placing another tray in the oven, when she heard it. A cry, sharp and desperate. "Grandma!" Margaret's heart stopped. She'd heard Lily cry before. The frustrated tears of a dropped toy, the scared whimper after a bad dream. But this was different. This was pain. She rushed down the hallway, her slippers shuffling against the old wooden floors. "Lily, baby, what's wrong?" The door to the bedroom stood half open. Inside, Lily sat on the floor, her small body curled forward, both hands clutching her legs. Her face was bright red, streaked with tears, and her breathing came in short, panicked gasps. "It hurts, Grandma," Lily sobbed. "It hurts so much." Margaret dropped to her knees beside her granddaughter, her own breath catching in her throat. "What hurts, sweetheart? Tell Grandma where it hurts." "Down there," Lily whispered, pointing without looking. I can't close my legs. It hurts too much." Margaret's mind raced. A fall? An accident? She hadn't heard anything. Lily had been playing quietly just an hour ago. The little girl tried to shift position and cried out again, louder this time, her whole body trembling. On the wall above them, a paper star they'd made together last week swayed gently in the breeze from the open window. Margaret had told Lily that stars were symbols of hope. Right now, hope felt very far away. "Okay, baby, okay," Margaret said, forcing her voice to stay calm even as panic clawed at her chest. "Don't move. Grandma's going to help you." She stood, her knees protesting, and reached for her phone on the dresser. Her hands were shaking so badly she nearly dropped it. Once, twice. The phone slipped through her fingers and clattered to the floor. "Grandma?" Lily's voice was small and terrified. "It's okay, sweetheart. Everything's going to be okay." Margaret bent down, grabbed the phone, and clutched the small silver cross hanging around her neck, the one she'd worn every day for 40 years. "Please, God," she whispered. Her fingers trembled as she dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency?" "My granddaughter." Margaret's voice cracked. "She's 6 years old and she's crying. She says she's in pain and she can't move properly. I don't know what happened. I don't know what to do. Ma'am, I need you to stay calm. Where is the pain located?" Margaret glanced at Lily, who was now rocking slightly, tears streaming down her cheeks. On the floor beside her lay the old cloth doll Margaret had made for her years ago, the same doll Margaret had once made for Sarah, Lily's mother, when she was small. Lily must have dropped it. She says it hurts in her private area. She can't close her legs, please, something's very wrong. An ambulance is on the way, ma'am. Stay with her. Keep her as still and comfortable as possible." Margaret knelt back down beside Lily, wrapping one arm around the little girl's shoulders while keeping the phone pressed to her ear with the other. "The ambulance is coming, baby. They're going to help you. You're going to be just fine." But as Lily buried her face in Margaret's chest, sobbing, Margaret wasn't sure if she was reassuring her granddaughter or herself. Through the window, she heard sirens in the distance, growing louder. Within minutes, red and blue lights flashed against the bedroom walls. Heavy footsteps pounded up the front walkway. Margaret carried Lily as carefully as she could, the little girl whimpering with every movement. Outside, neighbors had begun to gather on their porches and lawns, arms crossed, whispering to one another. Mrs. Patterson from next door stood on her porch, hand over her mouth. Mr. Chen paused while mowing his lawn, watching with concern. As the paramedics rushed toward them with a stretcher, Margaret held Lily tighter, her mind spinning with fear and questions she couldn't answer. What had happened to her granddaughter? And why hadn't she seen it coming? The hospital waiting room was cold and sterile, nothing like the warm kitchen Margaret had left behind. She sat in a plastic chair, holding Lily's hand on one side and clutching the cloth doll in the other. The little girl had finally stopped crying, but her eyes were red and swollen, and she wouldn't let go of her grandmother's hand. "They're going to make it better, aren't they, Grandma?" Lily whispered. "Yes, baby. They're going to help you," Margaret said, squeezing her hand gently. But inside, her heart was breaking into 1,000 pieces. She looked down at the worn cloth doll in her lap, the same pattern, the same stitching she'd used 30 years ago. She remembered sitting in her old rocking chair, pregnant with anticipation, creating this doll for Sarah before she was even born. Later, she'd made a second one for Lily, passing down the tradition. Sarah. Margaret needed to call her daughter, but what would she even say? How do you tell a mother that something is terribly wrong with her child when you don't even understand it yourself? She closed her eyes and let herself drift back 2 years, to the day everything changed. Sarah had stood in this very hospital parking lot, actually. Different circumstances, different emergency. Her divorce had just been finalized. Marcus had emptied their bank account and disappeared. Sarah was left with nothing but debt and a 4-year-old daughter who kept asking when Daddy was coming home. "I got a job offer, Mom," Sarah had said that day, her voice barely above a whisper. "In Pittsburgh. It's good money, better than anything I can find here. 2 positions, actually. I'll work as a nurse's aide during the day and housekeeping at a hotel at night." Margaret's heart had sunk. "Pittsburgh, that's 6 hours away." "I know." Sarah's eyes had filled with tears. "But I can't make it here, Mom. The rent, the bills, Lily's needs. I'm drowning. If I take this job, I can send money home. I can build something for us." "What about Lily?" Sarah had looked away, wiping her eyes with her sleeve. A gesture Margaret knew meant she was trying not to break down completely. "I was hoping maybe she could stay with you during the week. I could come home on weekends, or you could bring her to visit. It's temporary, Mom, just until I get back on my feet." Margaret had wanted to say no, wanted to tell Sarah there had to be another way. But looking at her daughter's exhausted, desperate face, she'd known there wasn't. "Of course," Margaret had finally said. "Lily can stay with me. We'll make it work." Sarah had hugged her so tightly that day. "I'll make this work, Mom. For her, I promise." Margaret opened her eyes, back in the present moment. Had she made the right choice? Had Sarah? 2 years had passed since that conversation. Sarah sent money religiously, called when she could, though her shifts often ran late into the night. She visited once a month if she was lucky, twice a month if she could swing it. And Margaret, she'd done her best. She'd cooked Lily's favorite meals, read her bedtime stories, walked her to school every morning, helped with homework every afternoon. She'd given Lily all the love one grandmother could give. But had it been enough? "Mrs. Morrison?" A nurse appeared in the doorway. "The doctor is ready to see you now." Margaret stood, her knees stiff from sitting. Lily held tight to her hand as they followed the nurse down a long, bright corridor. With each step, Margaret's anxiety grew. In one particularly vivid memory, Lily had been playing with the cloth doll just last month, dancing it across the kitchen table. "I wish I could fly like a star, Grandma," she'd said, looking up with those big, innocent eyes. "Then I could visit Mommy every day." Margaret had smiled and kissed the top of her head. "Your mama will be home soon, sweetheart." But inside, Margaret's heart had shattered. What kind of world forces a mother to choose between being with her child and feeding her child? What kind of system makes a grandmother raise her granddaughter because there's no other option? They reached the examination room. A woman in a white coat stood waiting. Dr. Jensen, according to her name tag. She was younger than Margaret expected, maybe in her early 40s, with kind eyes but a serious expression. "Mrs. Morrison, please have a seat," Dr. Jensen said gently. Then she looked at Lily and smiled. "And you must be Lily. You're being very brave." Lily nodded but said nothing, climbing into Margaret's lap instead of sitting in her own chair. Dr. Jensen pulled up a stool and sat across from them. Her expression shifted, still kind but now weighted with something heavier. Concern, maybe even suspicion. Margaret's hand instinctively reached for the silver cross around her neck. "Mrs. Morrison," the doctor began carefully, "I need to ask you some questions about Lily's medical history." And in that moment, Margaret knew. Whatever came next was going to change everything. Dr. Jensen opened a folder and clicked her pen, her eyes moving between Margaret and Lily. The examination room suddenly felt smaller, the walls closing in. "When was the last time Lily saw a pediatrician?" the doctor asked. Margaret's mind went blank. I'm not sure. Her mother handles all the medical appointments. Sarah, that's my daughter, she lives in Pittsburgh for work. Lily stays with me." Dr. Jensen made a note. "So you're the primary caregiver?" "During the week, yes. Sarah comes home when she can. Margaret felt defensive, though she wasn't sure why. "I take good care of her. I make sure she eats well, gets to school on time, does her homework. I'm not questioning your care, Mrs. Morrison," Dr. Jensen said gently. "I'm trying to understand Lily's medical history. Has she complained about pain like this before?" Margaret looked down at Lily, who was nervously playing with the hem of her dress, pulling it, twisting it, releasing it, then pulling it again. Margaret had seen this gesture before. It meant Lily was scared. "Not like this," Margaret said slowly. "She's mentioned tummy aches sometimes, but nothing that seemed serious. Has she had any accidents? Any falls? Anything that might have caused injury?" "No, nothing. She was playing in her room, and then suddenly she was crying." Margaret's voice cracked. "I don't understand what happened." Dr. Jensen leaned forward slightly. "Mrs. Morrison, I need you to call Lily's mother. I need to speak with her directly. There are some concerns." "Concerns?" Margaret's heart began to race. What kind of concerns? The doctor chose her words carefully. "When a child presents with unexplained pain in sensitive areas, we have protocols we must follow. I'm not making any accusations, but I need to speak with both parents or guardians to get a complete picture." The implication hung in the air like smoke. Margaret felt it seep into her lungs, suffocating her. "You think someone hurt her?" Margaret whispered, her voice barely audible. "I'm not saying that, but I need to rule out all possibilities. Please call her mother." Margaret's hands shook as she pulled out her phone. She stepped into the hallway, leaving Lily with a nurse who had come in to sit with her. Through the small window in the door, she could see Lily still playing with her dress, her eyes wide and frightened. The phone rang 4 times before Sarah answered. "Mom, is everything okay?" Sarah's voice was rushed, distracted. Margaret could hear the clatter of dishes in the background. She was at the hotel mid-shift. "Sarah, something's wrong with Lily. We're at the hospital." There was a pause, then, What happened?" "She was in pain, terrible pain. I called an ambulance. The doctor wants to talk to you." "I'm at work, Mom. I can't just leave." "Sarah." Margaret's voice was firm now, almost sharp. "Your daughter needs you. Now." Another pause. Longer this time. Okay, I'll tell my supervisor. I'll get there as soon as I can. It's a 6-hour drive, Mom. I'll leave now." "Hurry," Margaret whispered, and ended the call. She stood alone in the hospital corridor, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. Down the hall, an elderly man pushed an IV pole slowly past. A young couple sat in the waiting area, holding hands and speaking in hushed tones. Margaret walked to a window that overlooked the parking lot. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. And there, just above the horizon, a single star appeared. The evening star, the first one you could wish upon. Margaret pressed her palm against the cold glass. "Please, God," she whispered. "Please let her be okay. Please don't let this be my fault." She'd done everything she could, hadn't she? She'd fed Lily, loved her, kept her safe. But what if safe wasn't enough? What if she'd missed something crucial? What if, by trying to help Sarah, she'd failed Lily instead? The guilt was crushing. She returned to the examination room. Dr. Jensen was speaking quietly with another doctor, a man with gray hair and wire-rimmed glasses. They both looked up when Margaret entered. "Mrs. Morrison," Dr. Jensen said, "we're going to run some tests. Nothing invasive right now, just blood work and imaging. We need to understand what's causing Lily's pain." "And then what?" Margaret asked. "Then we'll know more. In the meantime, we're going to admit Lily overnight for observation." "Overnight?" Lily's small voice came from the examination table. "But I want to go home, Grandma." Margaret went to her granddaughter and wrapped her arms around her. "I know, baby, but the doctors need to help you feel better first. I'll stay with you the whole time, I promise." Lily buried her face in Margaret's shoulder. The cloth doll was still clutched in Margaret's hand, and she gently placed it in Lily's lap. "For courage," Margaret whispered. A nurse came to take Lily for tests. Margaret watched her granddaughter disappear down the hallway, the nurse holding her hand, the cloth doll tucked under Lily's arm, and Margaret stood there alone in the examination room, surrounded by medical equipment and sterile white walls, feeling more helpless than she'd ever felt in her entire life. Dr. Jensen placed a gentle hand on Margaret's shoulder. "We'll figure this out, Mrs. Morrison." But as Margaret clutched the silver cross around her neck, She couldn't shake the terrible feeling that when they did figure it out, nothing would ever be the same again. Margaret sat in the hallway outside Lily's room, her head resting against the cold wall. The tests had taken over an hour. Lily was finally resting now, exhausted from crying and the stress of needles and machines. A nurse had promised to come get Margaret if Lily woke up. The hospital at night was a different world, quieter but somehow more intense. Every beep of a machine, every footstep in the corridor made Margaret's heart jump. "Mrs. Morrison?" Margaret looked up. A woman stood before her, maybe in her mid-40s, wearing a navy blazer and holding a leather folder. She had warm brown eyes, but they carried a weariness that Margaret recognized, the kind that came from seeing too much sadness. "I'm Denise Cooper. I'm a social worker here at the hospital." She sat down in the chair beside Margaret without waiting for an invitation. "Dr. Jensen asked me to check in with you." Margaret stiffened. "A social worker? Why?" "It's standard procedure when a child comes in with certain symptoms," Denise said gently. "I'm here to help, not to judge, I promise you that." Margaret wanted to believe her, but trust didn't come easily right now. "Everyone keeps asking questions like they think I did something wrong." "Nobody thinks that," Denise said. "But I understand why it feels that way. The system can be cold, impersonal. It forgets that behind every case file is a real family with real love." Something in Denise's voice made Margaret look at her more closely. "You sound like you know what that's like." Denise smiled sadly. "I do. My grandmother raised me from the time I was 7 years old. My mother, she struggled with addiction. She tried, but she couldn't take care of me. So my grandma stepped in." Margaret felt her chest tighten. "And your mother?" "She got clean eventually, but by then I was already grown. My grandma gave me everything: stability, love, a chance at life." Denise's eyes glistened. "She saved me, Mrs. Morrison, just like you're trying to save Lily." For the first time since arriving at the hospital, Margaret felt tears spill down her cheeks. Not tears of fear, but tears of being understood. "I don't know if I'm doing enough," Margaret whispered. "Sarah works so hard. 2 jobs, barely any sleep, just to keep a roof over Lily's head. And I thought if I took care of Lily, Sarah could focus on building a better life for them. But what if I missed something important? What if I failed her?" Denise reached over and gently touched Margaret's arm. "Listen to me carefully. You didn't fail her. The system failed you both." "What do you mean?" "I mean that situations like yours are everywhere in this country," Denise said, her voice growing passionate. "Families torn apart by economics. Mothers working multiple jobs just to survive. Grandparents raising grandchildren because there's no other choice. Children falling through the cracks of a healthcare system that's supposed to catch them." Margaret shook her head. "But I should have taken her to the doctor more often. I should have." "With what insurance?" Denise interrupted gently. "Does Lily have health coverage?" Margaret hesitated. "Sarah has something through one of her jobs, I think. But it's limited. High deductible. She can't afford to take Lily to the doctor for every little thing." "Exactly. So you did what millions of grandparents do. You handled what you could handle and hoped for the best. That's not failure, Mrs. Morrison. That's survival." Margaret wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "Sarah's driving here now, 6 hours. She's going to be exhausted and scared and she's going to need you," Denise finished. "Both of you are going to need support. That's why I'm here. I can connect you with resources, assistance programs, community health services, support groups." "Support groups?" "For grandparents raising grandchildren. There are more of you than you might think. Women just like you, carrying the weight of the world on their shoulders, loving their grandchildren fiercely, and wondering if they're doing enough." Denise pulled a card from her folder and handed it to Margaret. "This is my direct number, day or night. If you need anything, information, help navigating the system, or just someone to talk to, you call me." Margaret took the card, her fingers trembling slightly. "Why are you being so kind to us?" Denise's eyes grew distant for a moment. "Because my grandmother didn't have anyone like me in her corner. She fought alone, navigated every confusing form and hostile office by herself. By the time social services finally showed up, they tried to take me away from her." Her voice hardened. "They said she was too old, that I needed a proper family. But she fought them. She proved that love is what makes a family. Not age or money or a perfect situation. Did she win? She did. I stayed with her until I graduated high school. Then I went to college, got my degree in social work, and came back here. Denise smiled. Now I fight for families like yours, because someone should have fought for my grandmother. Margaret felt something shift inside her chest, a small spark of hope in the overwhelming darkness. Down the corridor, the elevator dinged. Both women turned to look. The doors opened, and a woman stumbled out. Disheveled hair, wrinkled work uniform, eyes red and swollen from crying during the long drive. Sarah. She saw Margaret and ran toward her, her shoes squeaking on the polished floor. "Mom, where is she? Is she okay?" Margaret stood and caught her daughter in her arms. Sarah collapsed against her, sobbing into her shoulder, her whole body shaking with exhaustion and fear. "She's resting," Margaret said, holding Sarah tight. "They're running tests." "What happened?" Sarah pulled back, wiping her eyes quickly with her sleeve. That familiar gesture. "You said she was in pain. What kind of pain?" Margaret exchanged a glance with Denise, then took a deep breath. "Let's sit down, sweetheart. The doctor will want to talk to you." Sarah's face went pale. "Talk to me about what?" And standing there in that hospital corridor, with Denise watching quietly and compassionately nearby, Margaret realized that the hardest part wasn't behind them. It was just beginning. Sarah burst into Lily's room before Margaret could stop her. The little girl was asleep in the hospital bed, her small body looking even tinier under the white sheets. An IV line ran from her arm to a bag hanging on a metal pole. Monitors beeped softly in the rhythm of her heartbeat. "Oh, baby," Sarah whispered, rushing to the bedside. She stroked Lily's hair with trembling fingers, then leaned down and kissed her forehead. "Mommy's here now. Mommy's here." Lily's eyes fluttered open. "Mommy?" "Yes, sweetheart. I'm right here." "It hurt so bad," Lily said, her voice small and scared. "But the medicine made it better." Sarah's face crumpled. She turned away from Lily for a moment, wiping her eyes quickly with her sleeve, trying to compose herself before turning back with a forced smile. "That's good, baby. The doctors are taking good care of you." Margaret stood in the doorway with Denise beside her. A moment later, Dr. Jensen appeared, chart in hand. "Ms. Morrison," the doctor said. "I'm Dr. Jensen. We need to talk." Sarah kissed Lily's hand. "I'll be right back, sweetheart. Grandma will stay with you." Then Margaret moved to the chair beside Lily's bed, while Sarah followed Dr. Jensen and Denise into a small consultation room down the hall. Through the window, Margaret could see them talking. She watched Sarah's face change. Confusion, then shock, then something that looked like horror. 10 minutes later, Sarah returned. Her face was ashen, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. "Mom," she said quietly, "can we talk? Outside?" Margaret's stomach dropped. She squeezed Lily's hand. "I'll be right back, baby." In the hallway, Sarah paced back and forth, her breathing rapid and shallow. "The doctor says it's an infection," Sarah said, her voice breaking. "A bad one. She asked me when Lily last saw a pediatrician, when she last had a checkup." Margaret felt ice run through her veins. "What did you tell her?" "The truth. That it's been over a year. Maybe longer." Sarah's voice rose. "She asked if Lily complained about pain before. And she did, Mom. She told me it hurt when she went to the bathroom. Twice in the past 3 months." Margaret's breath caught. "You didn't tell me." "Because I thought it was normal." Sarah spun around, tears streaming down her face. "Kids complain about stuff all the time. I thought maybe she wasn't wiping properly, or it was just growing pains, or..." Her voice broke completely. "I thought it would go away." "Sarah, don't." Sarah held up her hand. "Don't defend me. Don't tell me it's okay." "Because it's not okay, Mom. My daughter was in pain and I ignored it. I was too busy working to pay attention." "You were trying to survive," Margaret said firmly. "You were trying to provide for her. By leaving her?" Sarah's voice was bitter now. "By working so much I couldn't even notice she was sick. What kind of mother does that make me?" Margaret grabbed Sarah by the shoulders. "A mother who's doing everything she can. A mother the system failed." Sarah shook her head, pulling away. She wiped her eyes with her sleeve again, harder this time. "The doctor said they need to run more tests. She said infections like this don't just happen. There could be an underlying issue." "What kind of issue?" "She wouldn't say. Not yet." Sarah's voice dropped to barely a whisper. But I saw her face, Mom. Something's wrong, something bigger than just an infection. Margaret felt the world tilt beneath her feet. She reached for her cross necklace, gripping it tightly. Dr. Jensen appeared at the end of the hallway. Ms. Morrison? Mrs. Morrison? I need you both to come with me, please. The doctor led them to a private room. Denise was already there, her expression serious but kind. Dr. Jensen gestured for them to sit, then closed the door. I've reviewed Lily's preliminary test results, Dr. Jensen began. The infection is significant, but treatable with antibiotics. However, that's not what concerns me most. Sarah grabbed Margaret's hand, squeezing so hard it hurt. During the examination, I noticed some abnormalities that require further investigation. I'm ordering a specialist consultation tomorrow morning. What kind of abnormalities? Margaret asked, her voice barely steady. Dr. Jensen paused, choosing her words carefully. I want to be certain before I say more, but I need you both to understand. This isn't your fault. Sometimes medical conditions present in ways that are easy to miss, especially without regular checkups. Sarah closed her eyes. A single tear rolled down her cheek. Get some rest, Dr. Jensen said gently. Both of you. Tomorrow will be a long day. As the doctor left, Sarah buried her face in her hands and sobbed, deep, wrenching sobs that shook her entire body. And Margaret, who had held herself together for hours, finally broke too. 3 days passed in a blur of tests, consultations, and terrible waiting. Margaret barely left the hospital, sleeping in the uncomfortable chair beside Lily's bed. Sarah took an unpaid leave from both jobs, a decision that meant no paycheck for the foreseeable future. But there was no choice. I'll figure it out, Sarah said when Margaret brought it up. I don't care about the money right now. But Margaret could see the worry in her daughter's eyes every time a nurse mentioned another procedure, another test. Each one came with a bill they couldn't afford to think about. Lily, at least, seemed to be feeling better. The antibiotics were working on the infection, and the severe pain had eased. She colored in activity books that the nurses brought her, watched cartoons on the small TV mounted to the wall, and asked 100 questions. When can I go home, Grandma? Soon, sweetheart. When can I go back to school? As soon as the doctors say you're ready. Will it hurt again? That question broke Margaret's heart every time. No, baby. We're going to make sure it doesn't hurt again. But the truth was, they didn't know. Not yet. On the third evening, Sarah sat in the hospital cafeteria with Margaret, pushing a wilted salad around her plate without eating. Dark circles hung under her eyes. Her hands trembled slightly from exhaustion and too much coffee. I should have known, Sarah said quietly, staring at nothing. I'm her mother. I should have known something was really wrong. You thought you were doing the right thing, Margaret said, working hard to give her a better life. Was I, though? Sarah's voice cracked. Or was I just running away? It's easier to work 16-hour days than to face the fact that I'm failing her. You're not. I am, Mom. Sarah finally looked up, her eyes red and raw. I left her with you because I couldn't handle being both a provider and a mother. I told myself it was temporary, that I'd save money and come back. But it's been 2 years. 2 years of missing bedtimes and school plays and doctor's appointments. Margaret reached across the table and took Sarah's hand. You did what you had to do, and I was happy to help. Lily knows you love her. Does she? Sarah pulled her hand away and wiped her eyes with her sleeve. Or does she think I abandoned her? Before Margaret could answer, her phone buzzed. A text from Denise. Can you come to Lily's room? Dr. Jensen needs to speak with you both. Margaret's stomach dropped. Sarah, they want to talk to us. Both women stood so quickly they nearly knocked their chairs over. They rushed through the cafeteria, past the elevator, too slow, and took the stairs instead, climbing 3 flights in silence, their footsteps echoing in the stairwell. When they reached Lily's room, Dr. Jensen was waiting outside with another doctor, a woman Margaret hadn't seen before, older, with gray hair pulled back in a neat bun. Ms. Morrison, Mrs. Morrison, Dr. Jensen said. This is Dr. Patricia Hayes. She's a pediatric specialist. We asked her to review Lily's case. Sarah's breathing was rapid and shallow. Margaret put an arm around her daughter's waist, steadying her. Dr. Hayes smiled gently, but her eyes were serious. Let's talk in the consultation room. Is she okay? Sarah blurted out. Please just tell me if she's okay. Lily is stable, Dr. Hayes said. "But we've identified the source of her symptoms, and we need to discuss treatment options." Margaret's hand found her cross necklace. Sarah gripped the doorframe, her knuckles white. "Please," Sarah whispered. "Whatever it is, just tell us." Dr. Hayes nodded and gestured toward the consultation room. "Come with me. I'll explain everything." As they walked down the hallway, Margaret glanced back at Lily's room. Through the window, she could see her granddaughter sitting up in bed, playing with the cloth doll, completely unaware of the storm brewing just outside her door. And Margaret prayed, harder than she'd ever prayed in her life, that whatever they were about to hear wouldn't be the thing that finally broke them all. The consultation room felt impossibly small. Sarah and Margaret sat side by side in plastic chairs while Dr. Jensen and Dr. Hayes stood near a light board displaying medical images Margaret couldn't begin to understand. Dr. Hayes spoke first, her voice calm but direct. "Lily has a condition called labial adhesion. It's a pediatric gynecological condition where the tissue in the genital area fuses together. It's actually more common than most people realize, but it often goes undiagnosed because parents and even some doctors aren't aware it can happen in young children." Sarah's face went blank. I don't understand. How does that happen?" "It can be caused by low estrogen levels, irritation, or inflammation," Dr. Hayes explained. "In Lily's case, she also developed a bacterial infection that went untreated, which made the condition much worse and significantly more painful. But I check on her," Sarah said, her voice rising. "I mean, when I'm home, I make sure she's clean, that she's—" "This isn't about hygiene," Dr. Jensen interrupted gently. "This condition can develop even with excellent care. The problem is that it often presents with vague symptoms that are easy to miss. Mild discomfort, pain during urination, things that children might not know how to articulate." Margaret felt her throat tighten. The time she complained about it hurting were signs, Dr. Hayes confirmed. But without a physical examination, there was no way for you to know what was happening. Most parents wouldn't recognize this condition. Sarah stood abruptly, knocking her chair backward. She pressed both hands against the wall, her shoulders heaving. "So my daughter has been in pain for months, and I didn't know? I didn't take her to a doctor because I couldn't afford the copay, and now—" her voice broke. "Now she's been suffering because of me." "Sarah," Margaret started. "No!" Sarah spun around, tears streaming down her face. "Don't tell me it's not my fault. She's 6 years old, Mom, 6. And she was in pain and I was too busy working to notice." Denise, who had been standing quietly in the corner, stepped forward. "Ms. Morrison, please listen to me. I've worked with hundreds of families in situations like yours. This condition is missed all the time, by parents who see their children every single day, by school nurses, by family doctors. You didn't fail Lily. The healthcare system failed both of you. That doesn't change the fact that my daughter suffered." Sarah's voice was raw with anguish. Margaret stood and tried to reach for Sarah, but her daughter pulled away. Sarah looked at the doctors with desperate eyes. "Can you fix it? Please tell me you can fix it." "Yes," Dr. Hayes said firmly. "Absolutely. The treatment involves a topical estrogen cream applied daily and antibiotics to clear the infection. In most cases, the adhesion separates naturally within a few weeks. We'll monitor her closely to ensure proper healing. And the pain will resolve as the condition improves. We'll manage her discomfort with medication in the meantime." Sarah covered her face with both hands. Her whole body shook with sobs, deep, wrenching sounds that came from somewhere primal and broken. Margaret couldn't hold back anymore. She went to her daughter and wrapped her arms around her, holding her as tightly as she had when Sarah was a little girl with scraped knees and hurt feelings. "I'm sorry," Sarah sobbed into Margaret's shoulder. "I'm so sorry. I tried so hard to do the right thing and I failed her." "You didn't fail," Margaret whispered fiercely. "You hear me? You didn't fail." But even as she said the words, Margaret felt her own guilt pressing down on her chest like a weight. She had been there, every day. She had fed Lily, bathed her, tucked her in at night, and she hadn't seen it either. Denise approached them both, her voice soft but steady. "I know this feels overwhelming right now, but Lily is going to be okay. You caught this in time. You brought her to the hospital. You did exactly what you needed to do." Sarah pulled away from Margaret and wiped her eyes roughly with her sleeve. She took a shuddering breath, trying to compose herself. "When can we start treatment?" "Immediately," Dr. Hayes said. "We'll begin tonight. I'll also schedule follow-up appointments to track her progress." Dr. Jensen handed Sarah a tissue. "You should know, this isn't an emergency anymore. Lily can go home in a day or two, once we're confident the infection is responding to treatment." Sarah nodded numbly. "There's one more thing," Denise said gently. "Given the circumstances, I'd like to connect you with some resources. There are assistance programs that can help with medical bills and support groups for families dealing with—" "I don't need charity," Sarah said, her voice hollow. "It's not charity, it's help. There's a difference." Sarah didn't respond. She just stared at the floor, her arms wrapped around herself as if trying to hold the pieces of herself together. Margaret looked at her daughter, exhausted, broken, drowning in guilt, and made a decision. "We'll take the help," Margaret said firmly. "Whatever resources you have, we'll take them." Sarah looked up, surprised, but Margaret held her gaze. "We're going to get through this," Margaret said. "Together. No more pride. No more pretending we can do everything alone. We're going to accept help, and we're going to make sure Lily has everything she needs." For the first time in days, something shifted in Sarah's expression. Not hope, exactly, but maybe the tiniest seed of it. Dr. Hayes smiled. "That's exactly what I wanted to hear." Margaret spent that night in Lily's hospital room, curled up in the chair that had become her second bed. Sarah had gone to a nearby motel. Denise had arranged it through a hospital assistance program to shower and rest for a few hours. She'd be back first thing in the morning. Lily slept peacefully, the pain medication keeping her comfortable. Margaret watched the steady rise and fall of her granddaughter's chest, grateful for every breath. Around 3 in the morning, Margaret couldn't sleep. She walked to the window and looked out at the city below. Streetlights glowing in neat rows, cars passing occasionally. The world continuing on while theirs had stopped. She thought about Sarah's words in the consultation room. "I failed her." But hadn't they both? Margaret had been there every single day, and she hadn't noticed either. She'd dismissed Lily's complaints as minor childhood ailments. She'd trusted that everything was fine because she wanted it to be fine. "We were both doing our best," Margaret whispered to the darkness. But our best wasn't enough. Behind her, she heard the soft click of the door opening. Denise stepped in quietly, carrying 2 paper cups of coffee. "Thought you might be awake," Denise said, handing one to Margaret. "You're here awfully late. I wanted to make sure you were okay." Denise sat down in the second chair. "And I wanted to talk to you about what comes next." Margaret sipped the coffee. It was terrible, but it was hot. "What comes next?" Denise pulled out a folder from her bag. "I spent the evening making calls. I found several programs you qualify for. Medicaid coverage for Lily, retroactive to cover these hospital bills. A sliding scale clinic near your home for ongoing care. A food assistance program, and this," she pulled out a pamphlet, "a support group for grandparents raising grandchildren. They meet every Tuesday evening at the community center." Margaret took the pamphlet, her hands trembling. "There are others like me. Thousands, tens of thousands actually. You're part of a growing reality in this country. Grandparents stepping in when parents can't. Not because they're bad parents, but because the system doesn't give them any other choice." "Sarah's not a bad mother," Margaret said quickly. "I know she's not. I've seen bad mothers, Mrs. Morrison. Sarah is exhausted and overwhelmed, but she loves Lily fiercely. That's obvious." Denise leaned forward. "Can I tell you something about my grandmother?" Margaret nodded. "She was 58 when she took me in. She'd already raised 4 kids of her own. She was looking forward to retirement, to traveling, to finally having time for herself." Denise's voice grew thick with emotion. "Instead, she got a 7-year-old with trauma and behavioral problems. She could have said no. She could have let the state take me, but she didn't. She sounds like an amazing woman. She was. She died 5 years ago." Denise wiped her eyes quickly. "But before she died, she told me something I'll never forget. She said, 'I didn't save you, Denise. You saved me. You gave me purpose when I thought my life was over.'" Margaret felt tears on her own cheeks now. "You're saving Lily," Denise continued. "But she's saving you too. You just don't see it yet." The 2 women sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching Lily sleep. Finally, Margaret asked, "What about Sarah? How do we help her? She needs to come back here, to you. Working 6 hours away isn't sustainable. And honestly, after this scare, I don't think she can handle being that far from Lily anymore. She won't want to give up the income. Then we find her work here. It might not pay as much, but being present is worth more than money. Denise pulled out another paper. I've already contacted 3 employers in town who are hiring. 1 nursing home, 1 assisted living facility, and a home health agency. All 3 are willing to interview her. Margaret stared at the list, overwhelmed. You did all this tonight? I told you. I fight for families like yours. Denise stood. Now, you need to get some rest. Sarah will be back in a few hours, and you need to be strong for both of them. As Denise moved toward the door, Margaret called out, Denise? She turned. Thank you for everything. Denise smiled. Thank your grandmother, she would have done the same thing. Morning came with soft light filtering through the hospital blinds. Sarah arrived at 6:30, looking slightly more rested but still carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders. She found Margaret awake, holding the pamphlet and the list of job opportunities. What's that? Sarah asked. Margaret held them out. Hope. Sarah took the papers, reading through them slowly. Her expression shifted. Confusion, then understanding, then something that looked almost like fear. Mom, I can't just quit my jobs and move back here. How would I? We'll figure it out together, Margaret said firmly. No more doing this alone. No more pride. We're family, and family helps each other. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. But what if I fail again? You won't, because you won't be alone this time. Margaret stood and took her daughter's hands. Come home, Sarah. Come home and be Lily's mother, not from 6 hours away, here, with us. Sarah looked down at Lily, still sleeping peacefully. The little girl's face was relaxed, no longer twisted in pain. The cloth doll lay beside her on the pillow. She needs you, Margaret whispered. And so do I. Sarah pulled her phone from her pocket with shaking hands. She stared at it for a long moment. Then she dialed. Mr. Patterson? This is Sarah Morrison. I need to talk to you about my position. Yes, sir. I'm giving my 2 weeks' notice. Margaret squeezed her daughter's shoulder as Sarah made the second call, and then the third. By the time Lily woke up an hour later, Sarah had quit both jobs and called a moving company. She was coming home. 2 days later, Lily was discharged from the hospital. The infection was responding well to antibiotics, and the topical treatment had already begun to show results. Dr. Hayes had been cautiously optimistic during their final consultation. Keep up with the medication schedule, she'd instructed, and I want to see her back here in 2 weeks for a follow-up. Any increase in pain or discomfort, you call me immediately. Sarah had taken the discharge papers with hands that no longer shook quite as badly. She was different now, quieter, more focused. The decision to move back had settled something in her. They drove home in Margaret's old sedan, Lily in the back seat with her cloth doll and a coloring book the nurses had given her as a goodbye present. She hummed softly, drawing stars with a yellow crayon. Are you feeling better, baby? Sarah asked, glancing back. Much better, Mommy. Can I go to school tomorrow? Not yet, sweetheart. A few more days of rest first. But I miss Miss Peterson and my friends. I know. Soon. When they arrived at Margaret's house, Sarah carried Lily inside, while Margaret gathered the bags of medication and paperwork. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the front lawn. Mrs. Patterson waved from her porch next door, relief visible on her face. Inside, Margaret had prepared Lily's favorite lunch, grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup. They ate together at the kitchen table, the same table where Margaret had made star-shaped cookies just days ago. It felt like a lifetime had passed since then. After lunch, Margaret settled Lily on the couch with a movie while Sarah helped clean up the dishes. They worked in silence for a few minutes, the only sound the running water and the clinking of plates. Finally, Sarah spoke. Mom, we need to talk, really talk. Margaret turned off the faucet and dried her hands. Okay. They sat at the table, the same chairs they'd occupied during countless family dinners over the years. Sarah's hands wrapped around a cup of tea she wasn't drinking. I need you to understand why I left, Sarah began, her voice low. Why I took those jobs in Pittsburgh. You needed the money. I understand that. It was more than money. Sarah looked up, her eyes red-rimmed. When Marcus left, he didn't just empty our bank account. He destroyed my confidence. He told me I was worthless, that I'd never be able to provide for Lily alone, that I'd fail without him. Margaret's jaw tightened. He was wrong. Was he? Sarah's voice cracked. Look what happened, Mom. I moved away to prove I could make it on my own, that I could be a good provider. And instead, my daughter ended up in the hospital with a condition I didn't even know existed because I was too proud and too busy to take her for regular checkups. Sarah. No, let me finish. Sarah wiped her eyes with her sleeve. That familiar gesture. I thought working hard would be enough. I thought if I just sent money home, made sure she had clothes and food and a roof over her head, that would make me a good mother. But being a mother isn't about money. It's about being there. And I wasn't there. Margaret reached across the table and took her daughter's hand. You were trying to survive in an impossible situation. You made the best choice you could with the options you had. But I had other options. I could have applied for assistance. I could have asked for help. Could have swallowed my pride and admitted I was drowning. Sarah's tears flowed freely now. Instead, I dumped Lily on you and ran away. You didn't dump her on me. You trusted me with the most precious thing in your life. That's not running away. That's love. Is it? Sarah pulled her hand back. Or was it just easier to work 16-hour days than face the fact that I was falling apart? Margaret was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Can I tell you something I've never told you before? Sarah looked up. When your father died, you were only 12 years old. I had to work 2 jobs to keep our house. I left you alone after school every day for 3 years. You'd come home to an empty house, make your own dinner, do your homework by yourself. Margaret's voice grew thick. I told myself I was doing it for you, to keep a roof over your head. But the truth is, I was also running. Running from grief, from loneliness, from the overwhelming responsibility of raising a child alone. Mom, I never knew you felt that way. Because we don't talk about these things. We just push through, pretend we're fine, and hope we don't break. Margaret squeezed Sarah's hand. But we're breaking now, sweetheart, both of us. And the only way forward is to be honest, with each other and with ourselves. Sarah was silent for a long moment. Then she asked, How do I fix this? How do I be the mother Lily deserves? You start by being here. Not perfect, not superhuman, just here. Margaret stood and moved to Sarah's side of the table, wrapping her arms around her daughter. And you let me help you. We do this together. Sarah buried her face in Margaret's shoulder and sobbed. Not the desperate, panicked sobs of the hospital, but something deeper. A release. A letting go of everything she'd been carrying alone for so long. From the living room, Lily's voice called out, Mommy, Grandma, can we make cookies when my movie is over? Both women pulled apart, wiping their eyes and smiling through tears. Star-shaped cookies? Margaret called back. Yes, with sprinkles. Sarah laughed. A real laugh, the first Margaret had heard in years. Okay, baby, we'll make cookies. As they stood together, Sarah said quietly, I'm scared, Mom. What if I mess this up again? Margaret turned to her daughter and said with absolute certainty, You won't. Because this time you're not doing it alone. The following Tuesday evening, Margaret drove to the community center on Maple Street. Sarah had insisted on staying home with Lily. The little girl was doing much better but still needed close monitoring with her medications. You should go, Sarah had said. Meet these other grandparents. I think it'll help. Margaret had been nervous about it all day. What would she say? Would they judge her for not recognizing Lily's condition sooner? Would they think she was a bad grandmother? But when she walked into the multi-purpose room and saw the circle of chairs, the other faces looking up, most of them women in their 60s and 70s, she felt something unexpected. Recognition. You must be Margaret, said a woman with short gray hair and kind eyes. Denise told us you might come. I'm Patricia. Welcome. The group was small, only 7 people, but each face held stories Margaret could almost see written in the lines and tired smiles. We usually start by introducing ourselves, Patricia explained, gesturing to an empty chair. Just your first name and whatever you're comfortable sharing. Margaret sat down, her hands folded in her lap. An older gentleman spoke first. I'm Robert. I'm raising my 2 grandsons, ages 8 and 10. Their mother, my daughter, is serving overseas. It'll be another year before she's back. A woman with beautiful dark skin and silver braids went next. I'm Lorraine. I have custody of my granddaughter. She's 14 now. Her parents, well, they made choices I couldn't support, and someone had to protect her. One by one, they shared. Margaret listened with growing emotion. These weren't stories of failure or weakness. These were stories of fierce love and impossible choices. When it was Margaret's turn, she took a deep breath. I'm Margaret. I've been caring for my granddaughter Lily on weekdays for 2 years while my daughter works out of state. Last week, Lily got very sick. We spent days in the hospital and I didn't see it coming. I feel like I failed her. Patricia leaned forward. What was wrong with her, if you don't mind sharing? A medical condition I'd never heard of. Something most people don't know children can even get. The doctors said it's often missed. But you got her to the hospital, Patricia said firmly. You recognized something was wrong and you acted. That's not failure, Margaret. That's exactly what a good grandmother does. But I should have taken her to the doctor sooner. With what insurance? Interrupted Lorraine. With what money? Margaret, honey, we've all been there. We all have a story about something we wish we'd done differently. But we're doing our best with impossible circumstances. Robert nodded. The system isn't built for families like ours. Grandparents raising grandchildren. It's happening more and more, but there's no real support. We're expected to do it all with limited resources and no recognition. How do you manage? Margaret asked. How do you keep going when you feel like you're drowning? Patricia smiled. By showing up here every Tuesday. By sharing our burdens instead of carrying them alone. By reminding each other that we're not failing. We're fighting. The group continued, each person sharing their week, small victories and ongoing struggles. A grandson who finally passed his math test. A granddaughter who had a meltdown at school. Medical bills that were overwhelming. Moments of joy that made it all worthwhile. When the meeting ended an hour later, Margaret felt lighter than she had in days. Patricia walked her to her car. I'm glad you came, Patricia said. I can see you needed this. I didn't realize how alone I felt until I wasn't alone anymore, Margaret admitted. That's exactly why we do this. Come back next week. Bring Sarah if she wants. We have some younger parents and guardians who join us sometimes. Patricia handed Margaret a card. And here's my number. If you ever need to talk, day or night, you call me. Margaret took the card, thinking of the similar one Denise had given her. Hands reaching out in the darkness, one after another. Thank you, Margaret said, for making me feel less alone. We're a tribe, Margaret. Welcome home. Driving back to her house, Margaret thought about everything she'd heard. These grandparents weren't wealthy or particularly educated. They weren't superhuman. They were ordinary people doing extraordinary things out of love, just like her. When she arrived home, she found Sarah and Lily on the living room floor, making a castle out of cardboard boxes. Lily was giggling, her face bright with joy, the pain seemingly a distant memory now. Grandma, Lily called out, look what Mommy and I made. Margaret knelt down to admire their creation. It's beautiful, sweetheart. Sarah looked up at her mother. How was it? Good, really good. Margaret smiled. I think I found my people. Later that night, after Lily was asleep, Margaret and Sarah sat together on the porch. The air was cool and fresh, stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. Mom, Sarah said quietly, I've been thinking. When I move back here permanently, I don't want my own place right away. I want to stay here, with you, if that's okay. Margaret felt tears prick her eyes. Of course it's okay. I know it won't always be easy. We'll probably drive each other crazy sometimes. Probably, Margaret agreed with a smile. But I need you, and Lily needs both of us. Together. Sarah looked at her mother. Is that selfish of me? No, sweetheart. That's just being human, and being family. Margaret put her arm around Sarah's shoulders. We're stronger together. I learned that tonight. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge one by one, tiny lights piercing through the darkness, proof that even in the hardest moments there was always something beautiful to hold on to. 2 weeks passed in a rhythm that almost felt normal. Sarah had given notice at her jobs and arranged for her belongings to be shipped back. Lily's condition improved dramatically. The pain was gone, and Dr. Hayes had been pleased with her progress at the follow-up appointment. She's responding beautifully to treatment, the doctor had said. Continue the medication for another month. and she should be completely healed. Margaret had never felt such relief. Sarah had interviewed at all 3 places Denise recommended and received 2 job offers. She chose the home health agency, better hours, and it meant she could pick Lily up from school every day. Everything was finally falling into place. Then Marcus called. It was a Thursday afternoon. Sarah was folding laundry in the living room while Lily colored at the kitchen table. Margaret was making lunch when Sarah's phone rang. Sarah glanced at the screen and her entire body went rigid. "It's him," she whispered. Margaret turned off the stove. "Don't answer it." But Sarah's thumb was already moving toward the accept button, as if pulled by muscle memory and old fear. "Hello?" Margaret watched her daughter's face drain of color. "How did you—" Sarah's voice shook. "Who told you about the hospital?" Marcus's voice was loud enough that Margaret could hear the anger even from across the room. "That's none of your business," Sarah said, her voice getting smaller. "She's fine now. The doctors—" More yelling. Sarah's hand trembled. She wiped her eyes quickly with her sleeve. "You haven't called in 2 years. You don't get to—" The call ended abruptly. Sarah stared at the phone, her face ashen. "What did he say?" Margaret asked. "He heard about Lily being in the hospital. Someone from town must have told someone who knows him." Sarah's voice was barely audible. "He says I'm negligent, that I'm an unfit mother. He's going to file for custody." Margaret felt ice flood her veins. "He can't do that." "He can, Mom. He's her father. Even though he abandoned us, even though he hasn't paid a dime in child support, legally he has rights. Then we'll fight him." Sarah laughed bitterly. "With what? I don't have money for a lawyer. I don't even have a place to live yet." "You have me," Margaret said firmly. She walked over and gripped her daughter's shoulders. "And you have this house, and we will not let him take Lily. Do you hear me? Over my dead body." From the kitchen, Lily called out, "Mommy, why are you crying?" Sarah quickly wiped her face and forced a smile. "I'm not crying, baby. Just allergies." But her hands wouldn't stop shaking. 3 days later, a courier arrived with official legal documents. Sarah opened the envelope with trembling fingers and read the contents, her face crumbling with each line. Marcus Morrison was filing for emergency custody of Lily Morrison, citing neglect and endangerment. The court date was set for 4 weeks away. Margaret didn't sleep that night. She sat at her kitchen table with a calculator, a notepad, and her bank statements spread out before her. Her retirement savings. 43 years of careful planning, of putting away a little each month. Money she'd saved for emergencies, for medical care in her old age, maybe a small trip someday. She looked at the bottom line, $47,000. It would cover a lawyer, a good one. When Sarah came downstairs the next morning, she found Margaret on the phone. "Yes, I understand your retainer fee," Margaret was saying. "I can have a check to you by this afternoon." "Mom, what are you doing?" Sarah asked. Margaret held up one finger, continuing her conversation. "Thursday at 2 o'clock. Yes, we'll be there. Thank you, Mr. Chen." She hung up and turned to Sarah. "I hired a lawyer, David Chen. Denise recommended him. He specializes in family law." "Mom, we can't afford—" "I can afford it." "With what money?" Margaret met her daughter's eyes. "My retirement savings." Sarah's face went white. "No, absolutely not. That's your security, your future." "You are my future," Margaret said firmly. "You and Lily. There is nothing more important than keeping this family together. Nothing. Mom, I can't let you do this. You're not letting me do anything. I'm choosing to do it. That money has been sitting in a bank for years, waiting for something important. Well, this is it. This is what matters." Margaret stood and took Sarah's hands. "Marcus will not take Lily from us. I won't allow it." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "What if we lose anyway?" "We won't, because we have truth on our side. We have love, and now we have a lawyer who's going to fight for us." Margaret pulled her daughter into a tight embrace, feeling Sarah's body shake with quiet sobs against her shoulder. "I've got you," Margaret whispered. "I've always got you." The custody hearing lasted 3 hours. Marcus sat on one side with his lawyer, looking polished and confident. Sarah sat on the other side with Mr. Chen, Margaret, and Denise, who had volunteered to testify. Marcus's lawyer painted Sarah as negligent, citing the hospitalization as proof of poor care. But Mr. Chen was prepared. He presented medical records showing Sarah had brought Lily to the hospital immediately. Dr. Hayes testified about the rarity of the condition and how often it went undiagnosed. Denise explained the systemic issues: poverty, lack of healthcare access, impossible choices faced by working mothers. Ms. Morrison didn't neglect her daughter, Denise said firmly. She worked 2 jobs to provide for her. She trusted her mother with Lily's care. And when there was a crisis, she dropped everything and hasn't left her daughter's side since. Marcus's lawyer tried to interrupt, but the judge, a woman in her early 60s named Judge Patricia Watkins, held up her hand. "I've heard enough," she said. She looked directly at Marcus. "Mr. Morrison, you haven't paid child support in 2 years. You haven't visited your daughter. You haven't called. Where were you when she needed surgery as a toddler? Where were you for her first day of school?" Marcus stammered. I had work. So did Ms. Morrison, except she actually showed up." Judge Watkins turned to Sarah. "Ms. Morrison, I see a mother who made difficult choices in impossible circumstances. I see a grandmother who stepped up. I see a family fighting to stay together. That's what matters here." She banged her gavel. "Petition for custody denied. Ms. Morrison retains full custody. Mr. Morrison, if you wish to pursue visitation rights, you may file separately, but only after establishing a pattern of financial support and supervised visits. This court is adjourned." Sarah collapsed against Margaret, sobbing with relief. Outside the courthouse, Mr. Chen shook their hands. "You have a strong family, don't forget that." That evening, they celebrated with pizza and ice cream. Lily, blissfully unaware of how close she'd come to being taken away, ate 3 slices and asked if she could finally go back to school. "Next Monday," Sarah promised, kissing her forehead. As Margaret watched her daughter and granddaughter laugh together, she touched the cross around her neck and whispered a prayer of gratitude. They had won. 6 weeks after the custody hearing, life had settled into a new rhythm. Sarah's boxes had arrived from Pittsburgh, and Margaret's house slowly transformed into their shared home. There were adjustments, disagreements about bedtimes, debates over dinner menus, the occasional clash of 2 strong-willed women learning to coexist. But there was also laughter, so much laughter. Sarah started her job at the home health agency and discovered she was good at it, better than she'd been at either of her Pittsburgh jobs. She came home tired but present, with stories to share over dinner. Lily thrived. The treatment had worked perfectly, and today was her final follow-up appointment with Dr. Hayes. The 3 of them sat in the waiting room, Margaret holding her cross, Sarah wiping her eyes preemptively with her sleeve, and Lily clutching her cloth doll. "Lily Morrison?" the nurse called. Sarah squeezed Lily's hand as they walked back. Margaret stayed in the waiting room, watching other families around her. A young mother with twins, an elderly father with a teenager, another grandmother like herself with a small child. She wasn't alone. She'd never been alone. 20 minutes later, Dr. Hayes emerged with a genuine smile. "Mrs. Morrison, would you like to come back?" Margaret's heart raced as she entered the exam room. "Lily is completely healed," Dr. Hayes announced. "The tissue has separated properly. The infection is gone and there's no sign of complications. With regular checkups, she should have no further issues." Sarah burst into tears, tears of pure relief and joy. Margaret wrapped her arms around both of them. "Can I go back to school now, Grandma?" Lily asked, bouncing excitedly. "Yes, baby," Margaret laughed through her own tears. "You can go back to school." As they walked to the car, Lily skipped ahead, the cloth doll swinging in her hand. Sarah linked her arm through Margaret's. "We made it, Mom." "We did, sweetheart, we really did." That night, Margaret stood on her porch wrapped in her shawl, looking up at the stars. Inside, she could hear Sarah reading Lily a bedtime story, their voices soft and happy. For the first time in months, Margaret felt peace, complete, perfect peace. Monday morning arrived with golden sunlight streaming through the kitchen windows. Margaret woke before dawn and prepared Lily's favorite breakfast, star-shaped pancakes just like she'd planned to make that terrible Friday weeks ago. Sarah helped Lily get dressed in her school uniform, carefully braiding her hair while they talked about seeing her friends again. "What if they ask where I was, Mommy?" Lily asked, a hint of nervousness in her voice. Sarah knelt down and looked into her daughter's eyes. "You tell them you were getting stronger. And now you're back, shining brighter than ever. At the school entrance, Sarah kissed Lily's forehead. Margaret knelt beside her granddaughter and handed her the cloth doll. "For courage, sweetheart." Lily hugged the doll, then hugged Margaret tightly. "Will you always be here, Grandma?" Margaret smiled through her tears. "Always, baby, always. Like the stars, even when you can't see me, I'm there." Lily ran toward the school doors, waving back at them. Margaret and Sarah stood together, watching until she disappeared inside. "I'm sorry for everything, Mom," Sarah whispered. "For not being enough. We did the best we could with what we had." Margaret interrupted gently. "Now we know better, and we'll do better. Together." Sarah wiped her eyes with her sleeve and smiled. A real smile, full of hope. That evening, Margaret sat alone on her porch, wrapped in her shawl, looking at the stars. Inside, Sarah read Lily a bedtime story, their laughter floating through the open window. Margaret touched her cross and whispered, "Sometimes the loudest cry for help comes in silence, in a child's tears, in a mother's exhaustion, in pain no one knew how to name. But love is what makes us fight." And we fought, and we won. The camera pulls back slowly, showing the warm lit house on the quiet street, paper stars visible in the windows, a symbol of hope shining in the darkness. Margaret, Sarah, and Lily's story reminds us that family isn't just about being together. It's about fighting to stay together, even when the world makes it impossibly hard. It's about recognizing when we need help and having the courage to reach out. It's about forgiveness of others and of ourselves. And most importantly, it's about never giving up on the ones we love. Because sometimes the greatest victory isn't avoiding the fall. It's getting back up hand in hand and choosing to shine like stars in the darkness, together. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs to hear it today. And remember, you are never alone. There are hands reaching out in the dark, waiting to hold yours. Thank you for listening.